Live from the 607, it is the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour, where we're talking sports locally and nationally. Why don't you join in the conversation with the hashtag ODPH? Here we go. Welcome to another edition of the ODPH. I'm your host, Ken M. Sitting across from me this week is your coach, my coach, the coach, Coach Duffy.
What is going on, everybody?
Folks, let's waste no more time. Hashtag it up with us, ODPH. We got to break down some news in the sports world, going with the NFL this past week. Locks and Leaps was a big week this week. Coach, why don't you fill us in on the action?
Well, your boy went 2-0 this week. My lock were the Chargers going into that awful mess that is the Oakland Raiders right now. Just absolutely horrid performance by the Raiders. I don't even know if they mustered any offensive yards. I mean, it's bad right now.
It's brutal. It's so brutal out in Oakland. And for the Chargers, this is their 6th straight win, which they're, like I said, they're quietly flying under the radar.
And a dominant performance, and a performance when they probably needed to make a statement game. You know, they a win on the road like that, you know, that's a good win for them.
Absolutely. Phillip Rivers thrown for 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, didn't come back to haunt him. Melvin Gordon had a big game, 93 yards on the ground, 72 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. So the Chargers are clicking at the right time, and especially late in the season, beating in a division foe too. And for the Raiders, just more question marks, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I mean, now they're talking about 2 more players being out for this coming week. Gruden just made the announcement today in his press conference, so it's like, who do they got playing right now? I mean, besides Carr, I mean, nobody really.
No, I mean, this has been a season of just really question marks and finger pointing, I guess, if you're a Raiders fan.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing, too, I mean, I know we touched on it last week where we were talking about how Gruden's kind of come back to, like, the old style of coaching, which is kind of, you know, maybe in today's generational players not working. But at the same time, it's like you got to adapt and evolve. I mean, even coaches like, you know, Coach K, who, you know, at Duke said that he would never recruit one and done, and, well, now he's recruiting one and done. So you have to evolve with the times, and it's like Gruden's just, no, it's my way or the highway, and unfortunately right now it's the 1-6 way.
Yeah, and this is not the way you want to come and introduce yourself to the fan base, and especially you're going to be moving to Las Vegas and building the franchise there at some point. So there's just so much that his way is not working to the fan base that they got to figure a way to fix this and fix this quick.
Yeah, and I mean, you're trying to sell everybody on the idea of, well, you know, the future, but I mean, it's bleak right now, and the problem is that, yeah, you have assets and 3 first-round picks, but this draft is not as good as last year's draft, and it's certainly not good as what next year's draft, you know, the following year's draft is going to be when Tua in that class comes out. So, I mean, really, what are you going to be able to do by rebuilding through the draft? And it's not like you're a free agent destination.
No, by no means. I'm thinking free agents are looking at how the Khalil Mack situation went down and saying, why do I want to go there and then have that done to me?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that resonates with players, and especially when you see that, you know, they were so willing to trade Amari Cooper, and then the treatment that he's done for Derek Carr, who, you know, is a genuinely good guy. It's like, that's not a good look for you. And then Marshawn Lynch goes on the IR, and now you haven't heard from him at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's done. So, I mean, it's just going to show that to players. It's like, if you're not in the Gruden system guy, then you're not going to be my guy.
Yeah, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense because, like we've talked about, he really needs to evolve with the times if he's going to be successful out there. And from what we've seen thus far, I haven't seen that much growth to say, you know what, they're on the right track.
No, I mean, I don't think that there's been, obviously they do have the win, which is huge, but I mean, I don't think I've seen a performance out of Oakland that says, all right, this is, you know, a team that has a bright future. You know, at least with the Giants, you know that they have the skilled position players that, yeah, they're sitting at 2-8 or 2-7. You can see that there's a future there because you know that, you know, outside of a quarterback and an offensive line, you got OBJ, you got Sterling Shepard, you got, you know, Saquon Barkley, so you've got talent there. It's just Oakland doesn't have that at all. They have no real, like, oh, they've got, you know, this guy, they got that guy. The guy was Derek Carr, but Gruden's clearly shown that he's not a fan.
And it's just really odd to see just how quickly they've fallen from grace, because a couple of years ago we were talking about them as Super Bowl contenders.
I mean, I loved them in our show. Going into the year, I thought they would at least, I mean, didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, but I at least thought they were going to make some damage.
Yeah, and now the only damage they're doing is internally. And honestly, it's just looking from the outsider view in, it's just what's the direction going to be in, and especially you're loading up on draft picks of a weak draft class. That's going to be the telling sign, unless you can start moving assets and try and get players from other teams and trading picks. But how many teams are going to jump at that? That's the question you got to ask.
Yeah, and with the real rumor that, Gruden's real, the quarterback that he sees in the future as being Tua, and, obviously, he's not leaving Alabama this year.
Right.
And the quarterback position in this draft is very weak. I know that a lot of guys have kind of climbed up some boards, but that's just the quarterback position being the quarterback position. That's not by anybody's skill set.
Right.
That's just because a guy like Daniel Jones out of Duke is rising up the board just because the number of limited quarterbacks that's in this class. I mean, there's really only the three quarterbacks right now in this class besides, Oregon, Jones, and then the guy out of Purdue who is rising up the boards right now. That's it. So, I mean, you talk about a rebuild, but who are you going to rebuild with?
Yeah, that's going to be the question they're going to have to answer moving forward. And honestly, there really is no clear-cut answer.
I mean, the only clear-cut answer is firing Gruden, which I don't think they're going to do this year because they're letting him run the organization.
And you offered him a 10-year contract. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
For a lot of money for a coach.
Mm-hmm. But one thing that wasn't insane was your leap.
Well, it was an insane pick, but not an insane leap.
I have to say, as the Buffalo Bills fan in the room, well done, sir. Well done.
Well, the Jets are just the Jets, and they're just not a good football team. And I think they were 3-point dogs at the time. Mm-hmm. Something about that Bills team circling those wagons.
No, actually, they were 8.5 dogs.
8.5, okay.
Yeah, but
wow.
this was before Darnold got hurt, and obviously Josh Allen was not playing for the Bills. We all thought it was going to be Nathan Peterman going in, but he was on the bench and subsequently released after the game. And Matt Barkley, of all people, rose to the occasion, circled them wagons, and led the Bills to a 41-10 win.
It was just good to see LaShawn McCoy wake up.
Yeah, because the offense has been so stagnant. And I'll be the first one to tell you. It has been. I mean, Josh Allen's been doing what he can. The offensive line is arguably one of the weakest positions for the Bills right now.
You don't need to tell me about that.
Oh, yeah, I know, but for our listeners, because, we're going to go into the Giants game a little later in the show. But for the Bills, the offensive line has been the key, factor in the games. Can they hold up enough to let Josh Allen or whoever's quarterbacking do enough to move the chains? On this game, they did. They did enough. They got LaShawn McCoy finally involved for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what they needed to do. And Barkley, he had a great game, which for 232 for 2 touchdowns, I'll take.
Yeah, I mean, when your defense is playing, and I mean, the Bills' defense has played well for the most part this season. I mean, it's definitely not been the defense that has been killing them in some of these games. I mean, the Minnesota game, they were the reason why they were, winning the game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, the Bills have a good defense, maybe average to good.
Yeah. They have signs of greatness at times.
Yeah.
At times. But I'll say they're a very good defense.
And the offense, when they're 3 and out, it's no different than the Giants' defense. I mean, when your offense goes 3 and out and you are right back on the field after maybe a 4-minute drive by an offense that maybe got down to field goal range and they kicked the field goal, now you're coming right back on. Your offense goes 3 and out. Now you're right back in the field with, within like 3 or 4 minutes. That's tough on anybody to do.
Absolutely. So the Bills found a way to win, and obviously against a division rival, it's tough. And obviously we said it wasn't Sam Darnold. It was Jake McDowell as quarterback. And he did not have a great game, 135 yards and 2 interceptions. But going in with that, the Bills did enough what they had to do. And it was Josh McDowell, I'm sorry. I think I said Jake. But Josh McDowell did not have a great game, and they took advantage of that. And for the Bills, it was a great win. And moving forward with it, the Bills are going to go on the bye. They are saying if Josh Allen is healthy enough, they're going to put him back as starting quarterback.
As they should.
Yeah, you know what? I can't argue. I could go either way. Because Barkley, he won the game. And for me, putting the rookie quarterback in there, I kind of look at it going, I like to rather see him on the bench to learn the game. But at this stage, it's good experience.
The only thing that worries me with Allen going back in is that obviously breaking the clavicle like he did on the non-throwing shoulder. It's like, that's an injury that you want to make sure heals, especially on a rookie quarterback. So it's like you really don't want him to re-injure that by taking a bad tackle. And a clavicle, obviously people probably know, like if it breaks very easily, especially if it's been broken once. Mm-hmm. So like you don't want to risk him taking a shoulder by a guy by trying to get extra yards. So it's like, do you want to risk that or leave Barkley in for the rest of the year on a lost season,
Yeah, that's the question they're going to have to figure out. And obviously going into Jacksonville, I just worry that they're going to try pushing him to get back in there for Josh Allen because of the comments Jalen Ramsey made, and he's going to want to really make a statement. And
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm all for playing the rookie quarterback. That's the mantra that where I come from, what I believe in is play him. You got to see what you have. I mean, obviously, I know the Giants don't believe in that too, but I mean, Eli is what it is. But like, I believe that you should be playing a rookie quarterback, especially if you've invested in him. Mm-hmm. You got to, foot to the fire there. You got to see what you have. Unless you have a veteran in a position that, can win you games, like when the Giants had Kurt Warner for that season with Eli, it makes sense to start Kurt out. But when you're the Bills and, the guy in front of you is Matt Barkley, I probably would lean to playing Allen had he not gotten injured. But this injury kind of throws me for like maybe you should wait and hold him off a little bit just because the season's at a loss anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to rush your franchise quarterback into anything he's not going to be ready for. And as for the Jets, I mean, they got a lot of questions moving forward, but they're in the same stage the Bills are. They're not going to be ready to make a real run for a while.
Yeah.
And this is where you're going to see when Sam Darnold is healthy, what do you have out of him?
Well, and that not only just that, too. I mean, they're a team, too, that has a decent defense. Obviously not today with the performance that they had, last on Sunday against the Bills, but they had average play for them from their defense that kept them in games. Mm-hmm. Offensively, it's the same situation, and it's pretty much the same situation with all the New York teams right now. They just, offensively, none of them can put up points, and you can't win games in today's NFL without putting up points.
Absolutely. So that's going to be the question moving forward for both of those teams. For my locks and leaps this week, my lock failed me, and failed me badly. I took Philadelphia. I figured, okay, we're going to go in there, we're going to take down Dallas. It's on home turf Sunday night. And let alone those Cowboys decided to show up and shut me up. Ezekiel Elliott had 151 yards rushing and just ran it down the Cowboys, or the Cowboys ran it down the Eagles' throats at the second half. It was all Ezekiel Elliott.
I just don't know if anybody wants to win the NFC East.
I don't think anybody does.
I just don't think any all four of those teams, none of them want to win the NFC East. One week it's the Redskins in first place. The next week it's the Cowboys in first place. Then it's Philly in first. And yeah, not the Giants, but everybody else has been in first place at one point. It's like nobody wants to win this division right now.
No, and everybody had been writing off the Cowboys prior to this game. Everybody thought
people were like, "Get rid of Dak, get rid of Dak."
Yeah.
Like, for what?
Yeah, exactly. What do you have as another option? And he's not a bad quarterback.
Not even that. It's not like he was like. I mean, Tony Romo literally lost games for the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Literally lost games. Seattle comes to mind right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
Dak did not lose you games. I mean, was his performance at a Pro Bowl level? Maybe not, but not at a point where you're like, no, it's his fault we lost. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Everybody's so eager to jump off the bandwagon and just start pointing fingers.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we got to realize Dak is in his second year, if I'm not mistaken.
Third, yeah.
Third year. So obviously he's still learning the game. This is something that he's going to be doing as he's progressing. And he's had a great run thus far, but obviously he's going to go in some slumps. But he has one of the best running backs in the league. They just don't give him the ball enough.
One of the most stout offensive lines in the league. I mean, the entire team. And now with Amari Cooper there as a weapon, now he actually has a weapon. I mean, you guys, people, we can't forget that he was throwing to Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
I mean, that was who his number one wide receiver was. And nothing against Cole Beasley, but he's not anybody that teams are going to lose sleep over. I mean, now that he's got Amari Cooper there, now he's got a real threat.
Yeah, and with that being said, it's like, yeah, when he's doing that, he's definitely got enough going for him that he can make something happen. And for Dallas, they did the right thing. They fed Zeke when you give Zeke the ball and just keep feeding him so he can get yards, he's going to wear defenses down.
I bet you there's probably a stat that if he gets over 100 yards, they're probably like 10-2 or something like that.
It's something absurd like that. It's got to be.
Yeah.
And for the Eagles, I figured when they had Golden Tate now, that was the one thing they might have been missing. I know the running game is a little suspect, but I figured Carson Wentz now had a real good back-to-back combo with him and Zach Ertz. And obviously, it didn't happen. I mean, Zach did have a good game, though, 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I thought they had enough, but in the second half, Zeke or Elliott just took over.
Yeah, I mean, this Eagles team's been just this team of like inconsistencies with all year in it. I mean, I know that they've obviously lost 2 of their top running backs, which, you know, is pretty difficult for any team to probably have to take on. But, I mean, trading at the deadline for Golden Tate when you already have, you know, you have weapons at wide receivers. You have Alshon Jeffries. You have, you have Ertz. You have weapons. Aguilar, you know, you've got guys on the outside. So it's like, you know, was maybe making the trade for Tate the right move? I mean, they probably should have tried to find another J.J., you know, another running back that they could secure with a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, I don't think any team was going to make the same deal that they got for Jai.
Yeah, probably not.
So I think the asking price might have been a little too high because everybody knew that's what they needed.
Well, not only just that, but I mean, still too. I mean, I'm looking at the box score right now, and it's like their leading rusher was, you know, my boy Josh Adams with 7 carries for 47 yards. I mean, that's just you're not running the ball enough.
Yeah, and when you become one-sided on the ball, it's going to make for a long, long game. I mean, no matter who you got there.
And it's not like Dallas's run defense is this, you know, top 10 rushing defense. I mean, you can run against them. Teams have done it. So it's like, why not continue to stay with the run? And it's not like they were trailing at a point where it was like, all right, we got to pass because we got to put some points on the board quick. I mean, you're still in this game. It was a 7-point game going in. So it's like, you can still run the ball and be effective. But if you don't run it, then you can't. You know, I mean, ultimately, and you have Carson Wentz, which I understand, but I mean, him throwing 44 passes is not going to win you a game.
No, it's definitely not. And for the Eagles, they got some work to do. Dallas, maybe this is the turning point for them. I got to see a little more before I'm saying they're going to merge out of the East, though.
I mean, I got to see something out of somebody in the NFC East because somebody's got to end up winning the division.
Somebody's going to win it by default. I mean, that's what it's going to come down to.
Well, I mean, they're all going to finish 8-8. It's going to come down to whoever won the most games in the division.
Yeah, if it's all split, then it's going to like how crazy would that be if it was a split thing?
I mean, really, right now, both these teams are sitting at 4-5, and I'm pretty sure Washington's sitting at the same spot too.
And this is just crazy to think.
Well, Washington's 6-3 right now, so they technically right now have they have the division, but it's like it's only 2 games.
Yeah, it's only 2 games, and that's easy ground to make up for somebody.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be a race to watch. And another one to watch is the AFC South, which is my leap because I was buying into Jacksonville. Leonard Fournette, finally healthy after how many weeks? I figured, okay, he's going to be all fired up, ready to go against Indy. But Indy is getting hot at the right time. Your favorite offensive lineman had a big, big game.
Yeah, if you have an Instagram or Facebook, you got to find the video of Quentin Nelson just absolutely destroying this linebacker on a pull. It looks like it was like a read option run that Indy was running, and Quentin Nelson just comes barreling around the corner and puts this linebacker in the dirt.
Yeah, he had a monster game. Andrew Luck had a monster game too, 285, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Compared to Blake Bortles, 320 for yards and 2 touchdowns. So obviously, Indy is playing at a high level right now. Eric Ebron is tearing it up for them as a tight end.
Oh, out of nowhere too, a guy who couldn't even tie his own shoe now catching 3 touchdown passes last game?
I believe so.
Wild.
And he's come out in the right time. It's not like he had a bad quarterback where he had in Detroit. He had Stafford.
Right. It was him.
Yeah.
It was just him.
And
I loved him coming out of college. I was talking to one of my buddies who had to play him in fantasy, unfortunately, and I was like, when Ebron came out, the Giants at the time had avoided tight end. I was absolutely hoping that they would have been able to get him, but obviously he went higher in the draft than projected, but I loved him coming out of college.
Yeah, and it's just scary to think just how much he's going to be potent in that offense. Andrew Luck has thrown for 3 touchdowns in consecutive games now. I forgot the streak, but he hasn't been sacked in a couple games as well, too.
Well, it's because you got Quentin Nelson blocking for
him. Right, but if they're catching on fire at the right time, the only thing you got to worry about them is their defense.
Yeah.
Because you really don't know what defense is going to show up from game to game. And Jacksonville, everybody was planning on penciling them in for the Super Bowl. and counting them in for AFC champs, not exactly 3-6 now. Granted, Fournette came back 53 yards and 1 touchdown. So I was almost right with my prediction because I said last week if he did 50 and 2, they would have won. And if he did, they probably would have. But Jacksonville,
it's crazy right now because I mean, obviously all of us like them going into the year. I mean, obviously Pat didn't being the Patriot fan, but it's like we all thought they would at least make it to the playoffs, if not the AFC Championship game. And now all of a sudden, it's like, people are fighting for jobs right now.
Yeah, and that's going to be the question for them because now with Jacksonville, you had that stout defense, and now you're kind of seeing, holes in the armor there, so to speak.
Stout defense right now, giving up 29 points to a Colts team right now is not looking very stout. That was their strength going into the year. And then obviously they had a good, few weeks where the offense were putting up points. I mean, they got to figure something out. They got to correct the ship right now.
Yeah, and honestly, there's really no clear-cut answer of how to fix it. I know Buffalo will be waiting for him in 2 weeks, but we'll have to see what they do in between then. And going into Sound Guy Galore JR's leap to close out the segment, your beloved New York Giants, Coach.
Man, I'm very upset about this win. I mean, this is the race to keep up with Oakland right now, and with how bad Oakland looks. I mean, this is not good. The Giants looked very good on Monday night offensively. The offensive line played great. They talked about it on Monday Night Football that for whatever reason, San Francisco typically runs a base 4-3 defense, but they were only playing a 3-man front, and they weren't rushing the passer. So I think Boogs talked about McFarland that the statistic is whenever San Francisco would do a 3-man front, they would always blitz.
Yeah.
But they opted not to blitz on that 3-man front and just drop people back. And, Eli was able to get time, and he showed that he can still be a quarterback in the NFL if given an offensive line. Like I've said for the last 8 weeks that we've been here, that if you give Eli Manning time and you give him an offensive line, he can still be a quarterback that can win you games. And by God, he did it.
Yeah, he looked great on Monday night. And like you say, if you can keep him standing upright, he can get the ball downfield.
Yeah, I mean, he even showed a little pocket awareness in that one touchdown to OBJ when he was sliding up in the pocket after it broke down and, able to keep his eyes upfield, which has been a problem for him all year. I mean, Saquon Barkley did not get going, which is a little bit of a cause for concern. But, I mean, still getting Odell in the end zone twice, that's huge because the guy needs to be getting touches. I mean, when you have weapons like Barkley and Beckham and Ingram, you got to be able to get these guys the ball in space, and they haven't. That's been the biggest problem. And I'm not gonna lie, when Beckham dropped that first pass on that slant to start the game, I literally turned to my wife and I go, "Here we go. This is gonna be bad." But the defense buckled down after that first drive, and they looked good too. And, now this team's got a little bit of momentum coming off of a good road win. I mean, it's not easy to go out west and play, San Francisco, especially given, all the things that are happening in that area right now. It's definitely a hardship for them right now. And to go out and play and perform the way that they did just goes to show that this team is a good football team.
Yeah, it definitely was a competitive game. And like I said, Frisco has just had a lot of bad luck on its side. But they're a team that will be on the rise in the next couple of years. John Lynch's plan to rebuild the franchise seems to be heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, Marquise Goodwin as a wide receiver is definitely a threat. Obviously losing Garoppolo, even though he was kind of up and down after prior to the injury, but he's going to come back next year and be strong. Mullins has looked very good for being a undrafted free agent rookie quarterback. I mean, he's played very, very well. In a system that works for them because what they just make sure that they get Breda and the running backs going, and then they can hit the play action, which at the end of the day is what the Giants need to be doing. I mean, this is the same stuff that wins games. I mean, Tom Brady, as much as everybody loves to throw their hat and he's the greatest quarterback of all time, they still run play action there.
Yeah.
You have to be able to establish a run game before you can get your quarterback going because the play action opens things up for your quarterbacks. And the same goes for guys like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. Play action is so important as a weapon for your quarterback that if you can't get a run game going and you just have to throw the ball 44 times, Carson Wentz, that you can't win games that way, regardless of the way that the NFL is going. So, yeah, I mean, tip of the cap to the Giants. I hope you don't win another game for the rest of the year because we need to get a high draft. Well, they need to get a high draft position here to land the quarterback out of Oregon. But, at the end of the day, that's a great win. Schumer deserves it.
Absolutely. That was our locks and leaps for this past week of the NFL action. Let us know what you think of the action. Hit us up on the hashtag ODPH. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Rob Kucherik from the band 607, Autopilot Off, and Walking Distance, and you're listening to ODPH.
Coming back for segment number 2 on this week's ODPH, and we got to talk a little bit about the NBA, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with the good. Jimmy Butler, finally out of Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, a mid-season trade, in November, nonetheless, is wild from the NBA standpoint, especially a superstar.
Absolutely, but it had to be done. And I think for anybody that thought he was going out west, and dare I say, if you're the Houston Rockets, who we're going to get to a little bit later in the segment, how mad do you have to be that you offered 4 number 1 picks, rumored, and you still can get the job done?
I mean, that trade from the Minnesota standpoint, I mean, I understand why Tibbs didn't want to make that trade, Tom Thibodeau and that organization, because at the end of the day, who knows if they're even there? Scott Layden, the general manager. I understand, because who knows if you're even going to be there to use those picks. Mm-hmm. So, that makes sense why they didn't want to trade that there. Plus, you don't want to trade him out west anyway. You don't want him anywhere near you.
Exactly. As we've been talking about for weeks, I thought he was going to go east somewhere. I thought he was going to be coming with the Knicks at some point. He still might. I'm holding out hope. But to land him in Philadelphia, and they gave up relatively not a lot for him, but a decent amount.
Well, Covington is a very very, very good 3-and-D guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, that he will fit very, very well in a Thibodeau system. He will be essentially just sliding right into the Jimmy Butler role, basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, he won't be as much of a scoring threat, but that's exactly where you can pen him in. And Saric is a very good stretch 4 who can hit the 3 very, very well at a high percentage. So, I mean, Philly's actually that's really going to hurt them, because losing Ilyasova in free agency last year to Milwaukee's already, you can see hurting their depth that they had on the bench as far as scoring and production. So now you lose another guy who was a 3-point threat at the 4. Obviously Wilson Chandler coming back will help alleviate that, but he's not shooting the 3 at the same clip that Saric or Ilyasova was.
No, definitely not. But overall, though, Jimmy Butler wind up in Philly. I think that's a perfect match.
Yeah, I mean, from a win-law, who won this trade? Obviously, I definitely think Philly did, because not only did they make this trade, but they didn't have to give up one of those coveted first-round picks that they have, which is huge from their standpoint. So, I mean, now you're talking about a starting lineup of Ben Simmons moving to the 1, which is, his natural position, given what he can do with the ball. Yeah. JJ Redick slides back into the starting lineup now as the 3-point threat and floor spacer, basically. Jimmy Butler, ultimately your playmaker and closer when you need him. Wilson Chandler now slides into the 4, which, like I said earlier, he's a solid role player, reserve type player, veteran, who would be good in that locker room, and then Embiid obviously at the 5.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, especially for a young team. The only question that we're going to have to watch and see, but I think this is going to work, though, is Jimmy Butler is that intense, and that, veteran leadership that they need, especially with a young team, how he's going to, come across to his teammates. Because we were hearing about the rumblings he was having with Towns out west there and the rest of the Timberwolves. That was kind of coming off as, he was a little too intense for him.
Well, I think culturally, I think it's different too. I think that those guys out there, I mean, not to say that I know, but obviously there's been talks of work ethic issues with the rest of the Timberwolves in that young roster. I don't think that's the problem in Philly. I think Philly wants it, and I think Philly sees that there's a window of opportunity now, especially with LeBron gone and Boston playing the way that they are right now, that they saw that, let's strike while the iron's hot. And I mean, yeah, sure, Embiid likes to have fun and everything, but at the end of the day, he still produces. There's a difference between having fun and not producing and having fun and winning. And when you're having fun and winning, then everybody's getting along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for Butler, he's going to want to come in there and make a statement too, because I think his mentality fits Philly so perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Right in the press conference today when they announced him, I mean, it was I'm the first guy in and I'm the last guy out.
And
that's what you want.
Yeah, because I think that Philly has desperately needed this kind of superstar mentality they haven't had since Iverson, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Embiid definitely embodies that. I just don't think, he's there from a, not necessarily a name standpoint, but just from a production standpoint, because at the end of the day, he's still a 5, and the NBA is just not a center-driven league anymore like it used to be.
Right.
I mean, if Embiid's playing in the NBA 10 years ago with AI, now you're talking about, a Kobe, Shaq type, situation. But, Ben Simmons, obviously, being able to go back to the 1 will help Jimmy Butler. And defensively, that's a nightmare for them, because now they've got, 2 guys that can cover 4 different positions.
Yeah, and that's scary for any team in the East.
The biggest thing that I think that people and some people have talked about is the Fultz situation, though.
Yeah.
Because now this slides him back to the bench, and already a kid with shaky confidence. And the 3-throw that everybody obviously is talking about now, where he basically pump faked it.
Yeah, which
was just, and it's crazy. I don't know what will happen with him.
You have to move him.
Well,
that's ultimately what you have to do, is you have to send him somewhere. I would send him out west. I would send him, there isn't a team that necessarily needs a player of his stature right now, but I think you could definitely move him, and I think that that's what they need to do, because obviously with his confidence being so shaky, and to see that Philly isn't a win now mentality, they're not going to have a learning curve, so to speak.
There's no room for player development right now. This is, a window. Obviously Jimmy Butler's a free agent at the end of or can be a free agent at the end of the year, and there's already talks of him, interested in re-signing in Philly. But I mean, you're talking at a 1 to 2 year window max with this guy being, under contract. So it's like, I mean, it's a win now mentality.
Yeah, so they definitely have to move him. I mean, I'm not sure where. Like I said, West would be the ideal situation. Maybe Sacramento, maybe Phoenix too. I mean, he has to get some new scenery and then rebuild his confidence with a young team.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that anywhere that will take him on is a fine trade for them. I don't think they need to worry about him staying in the East, because it's like he's not a threat necessarily offensively. And I mean, listen, I root for him. I obviously you see what's going on. You feel for him, because whether you've played basketball or any sport in the world, like when you have the yips, it's tough to watch. And I mean, obviously this kid has a talent that he was able to secure a scholarship from a Division I basketball program. So I mean, the kid can play. It's just all in his head right now.
Yeah, so he definitely needs a change of scenery. And for Philly, they definitely have made their presence known in the East. Not that it wasn't there already, but now with Jimmy Butler, you have to say they're arguably the odds-on favorite to win.
I mean, Toronto's playing some really, really, really good basketball right now. And, I mean, a Toronto-Philly series is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, that would be great to watch.
And, I mean, if Boston can get back in it, which they can, the East now is a 3-team race. I mean, really, any one of those teams can win it. And, really, I think either one of those teams can really challenge Golden State right now. Each of them match up defensively, which was the problem with Golden State, is that you can't match up with them defensively with their offense. But now that you've got a guy like Jimmy Butler who's going to be able to cover, who's going to be able to cover KD, then you got a guy like, JJ Redick, who will scrap his tail off to cover Steph Curry. I mean, obviously the elite talent that Steph is, he's going to get a shot off.
Oh, yeah.
So there's only so much he can do. And then you slide Simmons over to cover, or even Wilson Chandler to cover Klay Thompson, or even Wilson Chandler, because Wilson Chandler can slide in and cover either one of those two. So, I mean, you could even have Wilson Chandler cover Klay and have Simmons cover Draymond Green. Obviously when DeMarcus Cousins comes back, and if he does, that's going to create a whole nother, question for later. But right now, given the situation in the lineups, that team matches up very well with what Golden State does offensively, and Toronto does too.
Yeah.
Because Kawhi can cover everybody.
Yeah, the East is definitely making its presence felt, and obviously it's doing enough to step in the right direction that it's not just going to be Golden State, running away with everything.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see Ben Simmons actually play the point guard position to start the game. Not just have him run it with Fultz, but actually start and probably close the game at that position.
Yeah, so Philly is definitely doing some good things. One team that you got to say is doing bad right now is Houston. Where do you even go with the Carmelo Anthony situation?
Yeah, this is messy. messy.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate too because I mean you would have hoped that Melo and D'Antoni could have either squashed the beef that they had in New York or at least put it behind them. Obviously, there's still some bad feelings, with the two of them that it was causing issues.
It was going to be the biggest question mark going into the signing. Is how could they have played? Because obviously how they matched up in New York, it didn't work. I mean, it's proven.
I mean, the whole thing is that D'Antoni's, he has evolved as a coach since he was in New York. I mean, now they still run a pick and roll heavy offense, but they also run a lot of ISO stuff with Chris Paul and James Harden being the ball handlers that they are. Mm-hmm. You ultimately have to. I mean, so I thought that given the new system and what they ran, that Melo was going to fit with the new D'Antoni. But the problem is that he still takes those long twos, those long jump shots that just don't work in his system
anymore.
Yeah. And they're just not falling at the same clip. And when you talked about the fact that he was coming in there and they lost Ariza and they lost their other defensive stopper to Portland, that now you're talking about a gap, a Mune, that you have a gap now that he isn't the best fit for because he's not a defensive guy.
Right.
So you bring him in, you're bringing in another offensive guy. So you're hoping that he could have filled that role, and you have James Ennis, who you were planning on filling in that 3 spot. But Melo, the problem is that he's a volume shooter.
Yeah.
And he's not getting the volume shots.
And that's going to be the problem with Houston now, because obviously I think they're putting him on waivers.
Yeah, I mean, from all sounds of it, I mean, they only signed him for a veteran minimum, so the last report was that he played his last game there.
Yeah, so now question is where does Houston go from here, and where does Melo go from here?
Well, with Houston, they need to start back from square one with whatever they were doing defensively last year. Yeah. I know that they brought back the coach who was their quote-unquote defensive coordinator, and he's not going to go on the road with them, but he's going to be there for all the home games and practices that are at home. So you got to go back to square one with that. You got to figure out whatever that issue was, because defensively it's abysmal.
They're missing parts. I mean, that's going to be the thing. They haven't replaced any. They need to go make some moves and go get some bodies.
I mean, if anything, I would have thought it would have made sense maybe to try and move Melo on for Ariza and see if you could have plucked him back out of Phoenix, because I think he's the biggest piece that they're missing. But obviously that would have been a difficult trade to pull. So as far as that goes, you got to go back to square one defensively and figure that out. Melo, though, I mean, I don't know what he can do. I mean, he's obviously going to try and jump onto a contender, but
right.
It's like,
but at this stage, has the skill set diminished that much that is he going to be adding any value? I mean, if he can get going, he's great, but obviously we've seen this season he's just not there.
Well, I think it's a system issue too. I think part of it was that the system that D'Antoni was running was hurting him, and especially that defensively. Melo was the worst defensive player in the NBA right now. I think he's like at 109 points for the other team when he's on.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's just, you can't have that on the court. So it's like maybe a different system with a different defensive scheme, with a different offensive scheme might work out. Maybe somebody like going back to Denver, maybe that might be the missing piece that they need as a 3. The Clippers have already stated that they're not even remotely interested in getting him, which, that could help them too, because they need a guy who can play the 3-4 position. I mean, maybe a Portland, could be where they could use another scorer.
I was going to say, I could see him ending up in Portland. I figured that might be a good move. It's not a great move, but at this stage, you know what you're getting with Melo. Where is the most value going to be added? I did hear some talk, granted this was kind of more water cooler talk than anything, him going to the Lakers. Yeah,
I mean, that's obviously going to be talked about just because LeBron's there, and I think he's going to want to try and look out for his friend just because of the situation with D'Antoni. I mean, Stephon Marbury came out today on Twitter and said, some things that, the D'Antoni situation with him is very similar to the situation that's going on with Melo, where they're trying to blackball him, which is a shame. Because, I mean, Melo showed on Team USA that he can be a leader. Yeah. Because that 2016 team, right? Yeah, 2016 or 14 was his team. I mean, there wasn't LeBron there. There wasn't Kobe there. It was all Carmelo. And Carmelo showed that he can be a leader, and he played some of the best defense that he's had in his NBA, in his basketball career since he was, with Syracuse.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's unfair that this is going down. I hope he does land on his feet with a team that can contend because he deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know where that fit is.
Yeah, it's really kind of hard to figure out. I could see him going to the Lakers, and you know what? I think that him being out there with LeBron, I think would help him, and maybe, I'm not saying he's lost any confidence, because I don't think that that's the case, but I think a change of scenery, and obviously he can play with, arguably the best player in the world, and get his shots off when he needs it. I think that would be a good fit for him.
So the only thing that I have with the Lakers is that they run right now at the fastest pace in the NBA, or at least they're trying to.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to run this run and gun, this run and shoot basically offense, and that's really not Melo's fit necessarily. And I mean, if you sign Melo, and he's like, hey, I'm going to start, then you got to move Ingram to the bench.
Well, that's one thing I think Melo has to realize, that he's going to come off the bench at this stage.
But if he goes to a team like Portland or Denver, he could probably start.
He probably could, but does he want to go out to a team that is not necessarily in contention?
Well, I mean, the Lakers aren't necessarily in contention with him. I mean, yeah, you got the best player in the world, but...
Right, but with it being the Lakers, though, I think there's a little difference of just the markets and just where to go. So, I mean, that's the stuff we're going to have to watch moving forward with it. It's just such a bad situation with Melo right now that there really isn't any clear-cut answer.
No, you can't, because, I mean, there's nothing that really fits his game, because his game is the last of a dying breed.
Right. I mean, he could wind up in Golden State, because, I mean, that's an ugly situation right now, and they might be moving some parts a little sooner than later.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I thought it was a funny tweet here where I was like, talking about all the New York fans right now, because that situation is messy. In New York, we should be welcoming KD in with our arms, like the quiet, shy guy in the classroom that, has the crush on the cheerleader.
To fill people in, too, there was an incident involving Draymond Green and Kevin Durant on the court.
That probably, yes, that did happen. That helps to give the background story there.
That did happen, and it was very hostile, I guess. I mean, it wasn't fist thrown, but it was...
Well, I mean, it didn't even end there. It ended in the locker room.
It ended in the locker room. It was definitely heated. I think that's probably the easiest way we can describe it.
Heated enough that they suspended without pay Draymond for a game.
Yes. So that being said, my question to the coach, is the dynasty now falling apart in Golden State?
So, I mean, there's definitely a chip in the armor, and the problem is that they're losing games right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, winning heals all wounds. So, I mean, they start winning again, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be all right. Everybody's going to work things out. Everybody's going to shake hands, high five. Steph Curry's not playing right now with this injury. He's out another 5 games on this road trip.
Possibly more, which
is absolutely killing this team, because this team is not the same Golden State Warriors that were last year. The bench is completely different. This is not the same team. KD is still KD. Klay Thompson's still Klay Thompson, but this team moves when Steph Curry moves.
I agree. I fully agree, because the situation you have now is one of your star players has now disrupted the heart and soul of the team, because Draymond Green at the end of the day is the heart and soul of Golden State. He is their emotional leader.
Absolutely.
So now with KD, does this say that he definitely wants out, or how this treatment is going to go on? Can he play with these guys? I said beginning of the season, I think this was going to be his last season, and now I think I'm fully convinced it's going to be the last season. I think Golden State is trying to do enough to keep him, but I think at the end of the day, he's gone. And I think that this might have been the tipping point, because obviously they suspended Draymond. Is this going to be the first time that an incident like this happens, or is this going to linger on during the season? We don't know, because what really caused it, we don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a funny thing that you bring up, Ken, too, because it's like, you talk about the fact that Draymond is their emotional leader, but he's also been known to stir a lot of the other players, not just on his team, but on the opposite team in that way.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there was already that kind of animosity and necessarily tension with him and KD prior to when KD signed there. Now, obviously, Draymond was the first one to reach out to him and try to recruit him to Golden State, so it's like, it's so weird because he has this. It's almost like he's a walking contradiction because he literally will be the first one to stir up another player, but then 5 minutes later be the first one to be like, hey, you should come play with us.
It's just his game. He's just that much of an emotional guy.
And Boogs is a perfect example because literally they fought last year. They literally exchanged fists last year. They punched each other.
Yeah.
And now they're on the same team, and it was literally Draymond who reached out to him.
I mean, it just goes to show like what happens on the court stayed on the court, and just obviously it was one and done.
Yeah.
And in that circumstance when the emotions are ranging high. So it just depends if this is going to be something that Kevin Durant wants to deal with, because it's already been speculated he wants to leave at the end of this year. That obviously with the team, I'm not saying they're going on the decline by any means, but I think for him, he's tired of hearing the criticism that he had to join the winner to be a winner, and he wants to do it in his own way. Now, do I think he still comes to the Knicks? Yes, I do. Not saying this as a fan, but if he wants to get out of that shadow, and if he wins in New York, he's a legend. If he goes to the Lakers, which I was hearing some nonsense about there, I don't see that happening. I really don't.
So I agree with you. I definitely think that the Knicks move is the move that he wants to make. Should make for the legacy standpoint. I think the biggest thing is that, if he does go to New York, he can cement his legacy. And I think the other thing too is that for him, it's not just that, but it's also I want to be rewarded handsomely for the things that I've done.
Yeah.
He's already given the quote-unquote hometown discount now 2 years in a row by signing these 1 year with the 1 year option deals that, he ultimately terminates anyway just to resign. But still, though, he has not been paid to the full level of his talent.
He hasn't got a Supermax contract.
Yeah, and I mean, Steph Curry just got one. Draymond is coming up. Klay Thompson is also coming up. There are already talks of giving it to him. So at the end of the day, there's only so much money that Golden State can dish out. And I think the legacy thing comes into it too. And I think, LeBron flipped the NBA on its head when he went to Los Angeles, because not only did he go from a team that, probably was going to not only contend in the East, but probably win the East ultimately.
Yeah.
Even with the Kawhi move, you still got to favor Cleveland just because he is LeBron.
Right.
But I think that by him going to Los Angeles and going to this rebuild project and accepting the fact that it's a rebuild kind of made the NBA go unnoticed that, maybe it's okay to go to a team and rebuild for a year and see what they can do the following year.
Well, I think, though, to counter that, though, I think there's a difference with going to L.A. and then going to like a smaller market team to rebuild.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think that, but by LeBron saying that I'm not going to be afraid of the banners, I'm not afraid of the marquee, I'm not afraid of the trophies and all that. I think that, for KD then to go out east and go to the Knicks, I think it's the same thing, and it's the same mantra. I'm not afraid of the shadows in the room. I'm going to embrace this and take this on. And I think that changed when LeBron went to Los Angeles, because before, nobody wanted to go to L.A.
Right.
And now LeBron went there. So now it shows like, hey, if he can do that, I can do that too.
And I think for Durant, that's something he's going to jump on, because if he can win in New York, he writes his own legend.
Well, and I mean, I've talked about this with other people too. I mean, the Knicks roster is really not a bad roster.
No, definitely not.
I mean, Porzingis, I hope he stays out for the rest of the year. That is an ideal situation. I do not want him coming back from that ACL injury just to play in garbage time games that don't matter. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, then you talk about Lonzo Trier, who as an undrafted rookie has been amazing. Damon Dotson, who's played very well, as a second-year guy who's finally getting minutes. And then, obviously, Mitchell Robinson is a second-round pick.
Yeah.
And Tim Hardaway Jr., I would dare say, should be an all-star. And you can call me out on that all you want, but the guy's averaging 24 points a game on a team that is 3-7.
Yeah.
Or 3-12, and his 24 points matter.
Yeah, I mean, without him in there, the games are a lot uglier.
Yeah, so, I mean, then you plug Kevin Durant in that team, plus, hopefully a top 3 lottery pick with what we talked about last week with, Zion Williamson or, RJ Barrett, who I think actually would be a better fit given Porzingis wants to stay at the 4. So RJ Barrett could maybe slide into the 2. That's a really good basketball team.
I mean,
and KD instantly makes them a really good basketball team.
And this might be, like I said, this might be the writing on the wall that he obviously, if you're having this much combustion where somebody has to get suspended on your own team.
Yeah, and that's crazy.
Yeah, especially with a team that you guys are the defending world champions. You've played together for a couple of years now, so this isn't anything, new players trying to gel together and seeing what you get.
Right, and it's game 15. So who cares if you lose to the Clippers because Draymond tries to win the game himself?
Yeah, this is just something to keep an eye on, but I think this is a very telling sign that the dynasty might be over.
Over chipping the dynasty? Absolutely. Over, I don't know, because they're still going to probably win it.
They'll win it this year. But after the season, I think you might see some players moving to different pastures.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, they probably should.
And I'll have the Kevin Durant jersey lined up for the Knicks.
Absolutely. That 35 is going to look fantastic in blue.
Absolutely. But let us know what you think about all this NBA drama. Hit us up on that hashtag ODPH. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Johnny Moose from Excite Wrestling, and you're listening to the ODPH. I didn't mess it up. I thought I would. Right now, back to the guys.
Coming back for the final segment on this week's ODPH, and we got to talk that local minute. Binghamton Devils were winners this past weekend, winning 4-3 against Charlotte and 5-1 against Utica, scoring 4 goals in the first period. So the Devils have definitely been playing some very good hockey. They are at Syracuse as we're recording tonight on Wednesday, and they're going to be playing the weekend in Toronto, Saturday and Sunday. BinghamtonDevils.com for more information. Support those Devils. Coach, what you got for us?
The Binghamton Bulldogs are in action this week with home game at the Dog Pound 2.0. Is that what it's being dubbed?
We haven't heard anything otherwise, so just say DP 2.0.
Yeah, so they're going to be playing the Pottstown Flames at 7:05 in Johnson City at Davis College. And then they have a road game on the following Sunday. So back-to-back a couple of times here now. It looks like a lot of their stuff is back-to-back. So a back-to-back road game against the Oneonta Octane in Oneonta at 6. They also have a local youth event coming up on November 24th from 9 to noon. It's a co-ed basketball camp from ages 6 to 17. They're calling it the Gobbler Basketball Camp, so look for that on Facebook.
Definitely. The Bulldogs have been making some moves. They were winners this past weekend. They won against Elmira 136-108. David Hay had 33 points. Moni Anderson had 30 points. Chris Cartwright had 32. And they beat Westchester 128-106 as well, with David Hay and Derek Hart having 24 points each. So the Bulldogs are putting some moves in. 15th ranked in the ABA rankings last I saw. So definitely shout out to those Bulldogs. Shout out to Jimmy Evans and company. BinghamtonBulldogs.com for more information. Get out there and support those dogs, will you?
Woof.
Absolutely. So let's get around in those bases. Coach, you want to lead us off?
I will lead us off with not showing up, unfortunately, for all you Steeler fans. Le'Veon Bell did not report yesterday, and it's an unfortunate situation there. I mean, obviously, you have a stance on this or you don't have a stance. I mean, either you're for him showing up or you're not. You're upset that he didn't for whatever reason. I mean, at the end of the day, these guys put their bodies on the line, and they want to be, compensated for it. So good for him for dying on his hill. Ultimately, now he's going to be a free agent come the next year, and I've got a feeling that Pittsburgh's probably not going to be one of the teams looking to re-sign him.
How can you sign him after this? How can you? Okay, I mean, I understand his point about, worrying about his body and his career overall, anything. And then, obviously, you're arguing about the contract he lost. And I think by sitting out the year, he lost something like $14 million. I don't have the exact stat in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said, the dying on the hill line. I mean, he obviously dug his foot in the sand, all those cliches that this was his position, and he was going to either win it or he was going to lose. And ultimately, I mean, losing $14 million to me is a bit of a loss, but I mean, he held his ground and, power to him. I mean, ultimately it's his decision. So
yeah, you have to say that too, but if you're the Steelers, the relationship is terminated.
Yeah, I mean, as a Steelers fan, I would absolutely be upset. As a Steelers organization, I would definitely be very, very, very angry, because not only now are you going to lose a good football player, but you're going to lose him for free on a technicality.
Which, it's mind-blowing. I mean, just this whole drama. I mean, for me as a fan, I'm just happy to see this thing done for now. And then let's go crazy in free agency. because obviously, I think the Steelers can sign him to, what is it, a transition tag or something like that.
Yeah, I think they can like franchise him type style transition tag where they can
match an offer that's made to him.
Yeah.
But honestly, at this stage, why would you want to bring him back? He obviously doesn't want to play for you under the circumstances you were giving him. And that's fine. That's his prerogative. I get it. But I guess I'm looking at it as everybody else is going out there doing what they need to do. James Conner is a star emerging. As long as he stays healthy, the Steelers should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously him not reporting, and clearly the Steelers, by the Instagram posts that have been, on a couple websites now of them going through his locker.
Yeah.
I mean, there's clearly no love loss.
No, and I mean, how can it be? Because this has been dominating their headlines for how long now? And especially after every loss, there's always a tweet or some comment made on social media, which is like, okay, if you want to go through your issue, go through your issue, but why be a distraction to your team?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're at home.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're not even there. I mean, which is fine. Okay, if that's what you want to do, stay on your hill and ride it out. That's fine. But when you're taking shots at the people that are going out there and playing, and it's subtle jabs at the organization, you're causing a distraction instead of being, part of the solution.
Well, the funny thing was that his tweet from 2013 talking about a player who was sitting out, and Le'Veon's, at the time opinion towards that player who was sitting out, it's kind of a little bit ironic and a little bit comical now that gets drugged up. I mean, people be careful what you put on social media because it will come back to bite you if you say anything silly.
Always does.
Go back, delete those tweets, delete those old Facebook
yeah.
posts. I mean, this is 101 here. But, I mean, obviously Le'Veon felt, strongly about his position. The injury that happened out in Seattle kind of was justification, I think, for him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can justify it either way. I mean, there's two sides to the argument. It just depends on what one you want to jump on.
Exactly. I mean, I personally am on the stance of no opinion because it didn't affect me. He's not on my team. So I'm sorry, Pittsburgh. That really, sucks because now you're going to lose him basically for nothing. There was talks that Odell was going to hold out, if he didn't get his contract going into next year. So thankfully the Giants organization was able to put that behind him and sign him. So I didn't have to experience that as a fan. So I don't really know what that's like. And, I guess if maybe the roles were reversed and I was a Steelers fan, I guess I would be mad, but I don't know.
I know Steelers fans that are mad about this.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. They should.
They have to be livid about it. I mean, I look at it like this. I understand his point, but I also understand if you don't want to be part of your team, then you know what? Don't be a distraction to him. And that's what it ultimately turned out to be. So I think for the rest of the Steelers, they're happy this is done. They're probably like, okay, get his crap out of the locker and just we're done.
I think the counter argument is that you did sign a contract, honor your contract.
Yeah, and that's
that's probably the counterpoint that I would probably make to myself that would get me fired up.
Because now the question is when he goes into free agency, what team is going to take him knowing he's done this? That's gonna be the hot topic for next season's free agency.
Ultimately, a team is going to sign.
Oh, he's going to sign. Yeah. He's playing next year. He's not going to hold out. If he holds out 2 years in a row.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco tries to make a play on him. That would probably be a team that I could see make a move. I could definitely see a team like
I could see the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets definitely trying to make a move there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts, even with Mac playing it the way that he would, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make a big splash there.
No, but I think he's going to go big market to make up for some of the money he's lost, and I think that the endorsement deals he could get in New York, I think that's where he's going to ultimately wind up.
Yeah, I mean, the Jets probably have positioned themselves to get him. I mean, there were talks that they were trying to trade for him during and before the trade deadline happened, and ultimately a deal couldn't land. So now, unlike the Knicks when they made that trade for Melo and mortgaged the entire future, the Jets were smart, held out, and now they're going to get him for free.
I mean, well, not exactly for free, but
you're not going to have to trade your entire draft to land him.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So I mean, that's going to be the hot topic for next season's free agency, and we'll see how it plays out. I can just say I guarantee you he's not coming back to Pittsburgh. I just cannot see that in any way, shape, or form unless he's playing them.
I mean, the only way that he'll come back to Pittsburgh is if they franchise him and he has to play, because I'm pretty sure that within the language of the contract, like within the NFLPA, that if they franchise him and he doesn't report, then I think he gets suspended or something.
I don't think they can franchise him anymore.
Oh, okay, so they can only transition him?
Yeah, I think that's the case, and I think, like I said, I think he's played his last game as a Steeler. I cannot fathom after all the drama with this, he comes back.
Well, no, they would never match. I mean, if any team offers anything more than like $1 million a year, he's obviously going to get, there's no way. Why would they match?
Well, that's the thing. You got offered how much? He lost how much money this year?
Right, 14. I mean, 14 mil.
If 14 is the correct number, which I'm pretty sure it is, I'm not looking at a stat right now. Hit me up on ODP or OD Parlay Hour on Twitter and let me know if I'm wrong about this. If I'm wrong about it, if the Steelers matched that and he was going to willing to forfeit $14 million, if that was the case this year, forget about it. I'm saying you don't want to play for 14. I'm not going to give you 20.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we've seen this before. I mean, he's not the first guy. He's the first guy who has sat out an entire year because of contract negotiations. But I mean, obviously, Barry Sanders retired early. Calvin Johnson retired early. So I mean, that idea of I don't like the way that this is being, the direction of this franchise, so I'm going to sit, is there. I just think that this is probably now not going to be the necessary happen every year situation. I think this is not going to be the norm. I don't think you're going to probably see this again, just because of the money lost.
Yeah, this is crazy. Hit us up, though, on Twitter and on Facebook and let us know your opinions of Le'Veon Bell, because this is going to be a debate that we can go on all night about.
I mean, there's various opinions, so yeah, I mean, everybody probably feels a certain way. So
yeah, Steeler fans, hit us up, let us know what you think. So for my RTB segment, I got to talk UFC Denver. And the card that I mentioned last week and Rounding the Bases, that there was a little fight night card, let alone it was the UFC's 25th anniversary, and they held it where they had UFC 1 in Denver. The co-main event, Donald Cowboy Cerrone submitted Mike Perry with an armbar and broke that thing off clean in spectacular fashion. Cerrone and then immediately said, I'm going back to 155. And do you know the name of his next fight that is rumored to be all but signed, sealed, and delivered?
I hope you're going to tell me.
Conor McGregor.
Oh.
So let's expect some fireworks. Let's make sure that gets done. If he's going to go back to 155, that's a perfect fight. And I tell you what, Cerrone did not have that slow start that he normally does. He came out the gate ready to go at Perry.
And I mean, this is from a fight standpoint, to already call out McGregor's next fight and have it be Cerrone is an interesting matchup, because it's definitely not one and probably people were expecting. I mean, it's definitely something that's out of left field, considering that McGregor has fights lined up, in the weight class already, let alone a rematch, for the belt or Diaz, which was what was talked about originally and we had talked about before. So this is definitely something that was by surprise.
I think it was something that probably Dana was saying, okay, if Cerrone's going to come back, he is arguably a very marketable name. I mean, I think everybody knows who Cerrone is. And especially, I mean, he was up for an ESPY, if I'm not mistaken. So he's definitely a mainstream star in that aspect. And
I mean, when you talk about, too, McGregor doesn't need the belt to fight. I mean, he's that, just that universal fighter that, now you don't need to put a belt, in his fights to have it be a mainstream fight. So he can literally fight anybody, and it's going to be a headline pay-per-view fight.
Yeah, and that's something that I think as fight fans, that makes perfect sense, and I'm all for. And I tell you what, I like Cerrone in it. I do. You're going to expect fireworks. I would not say you'll see a lot of ground game at first, but I think Cerrone and McGregor throwing some hands, count me in. You have my money waiting for you for the pay-per-view. And then the main event of UFC Denver was Yair Rodriguez, who had been off. I mean, he was actually, I think at one point, cut from the UFC, stepping in to fight the Korean Zombie on short notice. This was a fight for everybody. Granted, the Korean Zombie was winning the fight, and this was very back and forth, very technical. Shots landed, people were busted open. This was everything you want to see in a UFC fight. And then we get to the final 10 seconds of the fight, and then the craziest knockout I have ever witnessed in MMA, me personally, happened, because Yair looked like he was going down, and he threw a backward shoulder elbow and clipped the Zombie right in the jaw, and he dropped lights out.
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy to see. If you haven't seen the highlights, everybody, I'm sure you probably, I mean, ESPN was showing it galore, on SportsCenter and everything. It was out of nowhere. It was literally,
it was a freak shot.
It literally looked like he was almost just throwing the elbow up just to because his body was out of control and he was just throwing it, and then all of a sudden when you saw it in slow motion, you saw he literally was actually trying to deliver the elbow. It's like, man, that's some next level stuff.
Yeah, and obviously, no fighter really lost this one. I mean, I know in the rankings, Zombie will drop a little bit, but he'll still be in the top 10 contention. And for Rodriguez, this is a huge win. Huge, considering the last time we saw him, he got mauled by Frankie Edgar, and we didn't see him fight for a very long time. So he's definitely making himself a statement win in 145. And going from here, there's going to be a lot of fallout happening. As we said, Cerrone is going to be fighting McGregor. But, Coach, let me ask you before we wrap up this segment. UFC, 25 years, what is your most memorable fight you have seen?
So I will probably have to go with John Jones versus Shogun Rua.
Okay.
Just from the standpoint of it was like the weekend of my 21st birthday. Here's the local guy fighting, for the championship out of nowhere, given all the circumstances around that card, with Rashad Evans getting hurt and then John coming in and taking in the fight. It's just wild to see. The fight was awesome. John was, catching the burglar outside the local convenient mart at 4 hours before the fight. I mean,
crazy.
It was just such a crazy, absolute wild night. The whole thing, watching it down at the local bar at Bobby's. The place was madness. It was just awesome. So for me, that's probably one of my, favorite fights. And then if I had to go number 2, I would probably go that Rampage Chuck Liddell fight that was on Spike in the early days of the UFC, just because I remember the fight so well, because, it was the first time UFC had really been mainstream for a big title fight like that. So I'm going to go with that number 2.
I got to say, my number 1 favorite all-time UFC fight is Dan Henderson versus Shogun Rua 1. That fight, I honestly remember sitting, and we always have a big crew come over for the UFC fight, and everybody was just glued to the TV. I don't think anybody moved, anybody checked phones. This was one fight that after the first round, you're like, holy crap, like what the hell is going on here? It was so back and forth, and every round you thought, okay, Henderson won this. He's going to knock out Rua. And then, oh my God, Shogun is taking down Henderson. This is going to get crazy. I honestly remember saying at the end of this, I don't care if they call this a draw, because I honestly can't pick a winner. And me, being a big Michael Bisping fan, I was hoping Rua won. But when they announced Henderson won, I was like, you know what? I don't care. He earned that. That fight, by far, their first fight is legendary. And if you want to tell people about watching a fight, you recommend that one, or you recommend Stephan Bonner versus Forrest Griffin 1.
Oh, yeah, from Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was the one. That got me hooked on UFC and MMA. And then, by far, I've been here since. And like I said, Shogun and Hendo is my benchmark.
And what a revolutionary thing, too, the Ultimate Fighter show was.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant at the time. Brilliant.
I mean, nothing had been... I mean, WWE had tried with Tough Enough and failed on 3 different seasons, 2 different channels. And then here comes Dana White with that inspirational speech.
So you want to be a fucking
fighter. So you
want
to be a fighter, just out of nowhere, and captured, the audience. And especially given the fact that it was on a relatively new, channel in Spike that had just changed from being...
It was a perfect... Yeah, it was
some random national broadcasting channel or whatever.
It was the Nashville Network, and then it was the National Network, and then, it had so many name changes. And then we came Spike, and it was supposed to be the edgier programming. And then that first season, and how many legends came out of that one. Just memorable names. And then when you got to that main event, everybody, I think, was calling everybody around and saying, yo, are you watching Spike right now? Holy crap.
Yeah, you got to watch this fight. I mean, and the thing that made it so passionate was, these were just 2 guys who had been living in a house together for 14 weeks, who had been training together. Obviously animosity will grow, period, just because you live with somebody for so long that it just happens. But, especially when you're fighting for the same prize. Mm-hmm. So, these guys were given everything they had because they had to.
Yeah. And it just showed, just how much heart you have to win. And just, obviously, it was a stage that, obviously, when Griffin won, Bonner had to get a contract, too. There was no way that he was going out there without one. And
yeah, and this wasn't like an American Idol thing where it's like, the winner and then the second place person's pretty much guaranteed something. Some, musical company is going to sign them. This was, if you lose... There's no guarantee you're going to get anything.
No, you were lucky if you made a prelim. Especially if you didn't make it to the finals. Yeah, they give you an occasional fight on the undercard for the Tough Enough finale, or Tough finale rather. So, I mean, obviously, and just looking at how that show has evolved, too. I mean, my favorite season of that, to quickly wrap this up, is Ken Shamrock, Tito Ortiz.
That was great. That was a great year.
That'd be by far my favorite one. But let us know what you think about that. Hit us up on the hashtag ODPH. We got to get into those locks and leaps. Coach, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna go with my lock. I'm gonna this eyeball. This jumped out at me and I gotta grab it. I'm gonna go with the New Orleans Saints hosting the Eagles at 8-point favorites.
Okay.
The Saints are playing lights out football right now. Philly, obviously, highly inconsistent. So I like where that's going right now. And for my leap, scrolling through real quick, I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs. 3.5-point dogs to the Rams. I mean, that's just too close of a point spread there not to take. I think it's going to be way too close to 3.5 points.
You know what, that one,
if the Rams don't outright win it.
Yeah, I'm eyeballing that, but I gotta give a Pad's picks first. He could not make it to the show tonight, but he has already texted in. He is taking his lock, the Chargers, 7-point favorites against Denver, and his leap is Tennessee 2.5 against Indy. So a lot of good games this week, and for me, I gotta say I am taking in my lock. I have to go with those Chargers as well too. I think Phillip Rivers is going to continue that win streak against the Broncos. It's a division game. It's a big game for them to play too. So they definitely have to do that moving forward. And for my leap, I am going to go out on a definitive limb here. And I am going to take Washington, who is +3 against Houston. I really don't have a lot of faith in this game because Houston and Washington, you really don't know what you're going to get either game out of either team. But I'm going to go with Washington. Let's roll those dice, folks. Let's see what we got. That's all we got for this week. So for Coach Duffy,
good night and good luck.
I'm your host, Kenem. Thank you as always for listening to the ODPH. We'll see you next time.
Together